The planet Virelia was dying. Its skies, once a brilliant blue, were now streaked with violent red clouds. Oceans that had shimmered like glass now boiled with acid, and storms raged across the continents with terrifying regularity. Once lush forests had become brittle and gray, their trees cracking under the constant fury of harsh winds. The animals that had survived the first waves of disaster were mutating, some growing enormous, others twisted into strange, aggressive forms. Every day, the Virelians, the planet's intelligent inhabitants, watched their world crumble, helpless to stop the destruction. In the capital city of Lorinth, the Council of Virelia gathered in the Great Hall. The hall was enormous, carved from a single mineral that glimmered faintly in the red light of the dying sun. Council members sat on high benches, their faces pale with worry. Every few minutes, the hall shook as another tremor rocked the city. "We must act," said High Counselor Relith, his voice tight. "If we do nothing, our species will vanish within a century. The storms are growing faster, the oceans are spreading poison, and our food sources are collapsing. We are running out of time. Our Filden." End quote. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Some members spoke quietly to one another, their tones filled with despair. "What can we do?" asked another counselor. "We have tried every solution we can imagine. Our scientists have worked day and night, but nothing has slowed the collapse. We need help from the galaxy. There must be civilizations out there willing to lend aid." Relith nodded. "We have no choice. We will send a plea to every species capable of answering. Every empire, every fleet, every intelligent world must know our need. We cannot survive alone." And so, the Virelian Council prepared the most urgent message in their history. It was broadcast in every known galactic language, across every communication channel. It spoke of the storms, the dying seas, the failing ecosystems, and the urgent need for assistance. The message was a cry for help, clear and desperate. Days passed. The council watched the sky and waited for a response. Slowly, hope began to falter. First came the silence. Then came messages from some of the largest galactic powers. Most were dismissive. "This is a local problem," one empire said. "We cannot allocate resources to a world facing natural decline." Another message, from a civilization known for its technology and wealth, offered long-term aid, but only in 50 standard years. 50 years. Virelia would not survive that long. A few empires offered advice, but no action. One even suggested that the Virelians might simply evolve, to adapt or perish as part of natural law. Relith's hands shook as he read the messages aloud in the council chamber. "The galaxy refuses to help," he said quietly, almost to himself. "They do not see our struggle as worthy of their attention. They think we are insignificant. They do not care." The council fell silent. Outside, another storm began to form over the eastern oceans. Lightning cracked across the sky, and the first wave of acid rain began to fall. It was then that the message arrived. It was not from an empire, not from a powerful fleet, and not from a council known for interstellar diplomacy. The message came from a small, unknown system, Earth. The transmission was short and direct. "We will come. Prepare for arrival. We don't run from hard problems." Relith and the other counselors stared at the message in disbelief. Earth? A small, relatively unknown planet on the edge of several galactic maps? And yet, there was something in the tone of the message that stirred hope. It was simple, plain, and full of resolve. Unlike the other civilizations, Earth did not hesitate. Earth did not delay. "Who are these humans?" one counselor whispered. "They call themselves Deathworlders," Relith replied, reading aloud the signature of the transmission. They survive where others cannot. Their worlds are harsh, their planets are dangerous, and yet they thrive. They are different. Perhaps they are our only hope. Within days, ships appeared in Virelia's orbit. Unlike the elegant, sleek vessels of the galactic empires, the human ships were rugged, functional, and armored. Their hulls were thick, designed to survive environments that would destroy other fleets. They were not designed for beauty. They were built for survival. The Virelians watched nervously as the ships landed. Humans emerged tall, strong, and scarred from life on their own deadly planets. Their clothing was practical, suited for protection rather than style, and their faces were marked with the faint traces of past battles. Yet their eyes were bright with determination. Rileth stepped forward as a human approached. The human raised a hand in greeting. "We received your message. We're here to help. Where do we start?" The counselors hesitated. The humans were unlike anyone they had ever seen. They radiated confidence and fearlessness. They were not diplomats, nor scientists, nor bureaucrats. They were survivors, and Virelia had never needed survivors more. One human spoke to another in a language that the translators barely kept up with. They gestured toward the seas, the forests, the storms, and then back to themselves. The message was clear. They understood danger, and they were not afraid. Rilith found himself nodding. Perhaps, he thought, this was the first time in centuries that Virelia might have a chance. Perhaps, with the humans' help, they could learn to survive the impossible. As night fell, the red clouds churned across the sky. The storm still raged, but for the first time in many cycles, hope flickered on Virelia. The humans began preparing their equipment, checking their ships, and studying the planet's worst regions. They did not wait for permission. They did not ask for approval. They acted. Virelians gathered to watch, unsure if they should be inspired or afraid. The humans' methods were strange, even reckless by their standards, but their courage was undeniable. They moved into the acid rain, mapped the storm zones, and descended into forests that were home to mutated predators. And somehow, they thrived. High Counselor Rilith whispered to his assistant, "If they can survive this, perhaps they can save us." The storm's lightning illuminated the humans as they moved, tall and unyielding. And as the first wave of acid rain fell, washing over cities and forests alike, the humans did not flinch. They adjusted, they adapted, they endured. Virelia's people had begged the galaxy for help and been ignored. Every powerful civilization had looked the other way. Yet here, on their dying planet, stood the humans, the Deathworlders, the species that thrived on hardship. And for the first time, Virelia dared to hope that survival was not just a dream but a possibility. The humans had arrived. Their ships, thick and rugged, stood on Virelia's scorched ground like silent sentinels, a stark contrast to the brittle, delicate cities of the Virelians. The humans emerged in groups, moving with a calm confidence that unsettled the local population. Their boots left deep impressions in the cracked soil, and their eyes scanned the horizon, assessing every danger. The Virelians, watching from above, could hardly understand them. Their clothes were functional, built for storms and rough terrain rather than elegance. Some carried tools that glimmered with strange energy. Others held devices that hummed quietly, clearly designed for research or defense. Every movement spoke of preparation, experience, and adaptability. High Counselor Rilith met the human leader in the center of the capital city. The human's name was Captain Jarek, and even from a distance, his presence demanded attention. His gaze was sharp, unwavering, and full of quiet assurance. He did not bow, nor did he speak with the ceremony the Virelians expected. Instead, he said plainly, "We are here to help. Show us what needs saving first." Rilith blinked. The humans did not flatter, did not negotiate, did not make promises they might not keep. They acted. That, above all, was what made them different. The first mission began immediately. Humans moved toward the Eastern Ocean, where waves boiled and spat acid into the sky. A small team of scientists and engineers followed behind, carrying portable devices designed to measure chemical composition, wind patterns, and radiation levels. They set up small, reinforced tents and observation posts, unaffected by the storms that would have destroyed Virelian equipment in minutes. Virelians watched from the cliffs above, terrified. "They are walking into the storm," one whispered. "They will die." But the humans did not die. They moved carefully, quickly, and efficiently. They used shields that could withstand acid rain, masks that filtered toxic air, and boots that gripped slippery rocks. They took readings, marked safe zones, and even managed to calm small groups of mutated sea creatures that had grown aggressive due to environmental stress. When the first humans returned to the city, dripping with rain and coated in mud, the Virelians could hardly hide their astonishment. Not a single human had been injured. Not a single tool had been destroyed. And yet, their expressions carried no pride, only readiness for the next challenge. "They survive where we would fall," Relith muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "They do not fear our world. They see the danger as a path, not a threat." Over the following days, humans moved in teams across the worst affected regions. They descended into forests, where trees had grown jagged and brittle, their branches snapping like glass. They navigated the mountains, where tremors cracked the ground without warning. They explored deserts, where toxic sandstorms raged for hours. Everywhere they went, they adapted, learning the terrain and marking safe paths for Virelians to follow. The humans began sharing their knowledge. They taught Virelian engineers how to build structures resistant to storms, using a combination of flexible metals and energy barriers. They showed scientists how to purify water even when the oceans were boiling and contaminated. They instructed farmers on ways to grow food in soils that had become acidic and infertile. At first, the Virelians were hesitant. Their culture valued beauty and tradition, and the humans' practical, sometimes blunt methods felt strange and even cruel. Humans would walk through a forest, chopping down twisted trees and setting protective barriers without seeking permission. They experimented, tested, and sometimes failed, but each failure taught a lesson. One afternoon, a young Virelian named Lyra approached a human engineer, her voice trembling. "Why do you risk yourselves in places we fear?" The human looked at her and smiled faintly. "Because that's what we do. We live where others would not. We survive where others fail. Fear is only a problem if you let it stop you." Lyra watched the humans as they worked, carrying equipment, repairing shelters, and setting up storm sensors in areas no Virelian would enter. Slowly, she began to understand. This was not bravery in the way their stories told it. This was discipline, skill, and experience honed through generations of surviving impossible worlds. Outside the cities, the humans faced a constant barrage of challenges. Acid rain dissolved metal, mutated wildlife, attacked without warning, and storms shifted unpredictably. Yet, every time they encountered danger, they responded with methodical precision. They set up temporary shelters in seconds, used tools to calm or repel creatures, and even navigated the most treacherous terrains without injury. The Virelians began to notice a pattern. Humans did not wait for permission. They did not argue over who should lead. And they did not complain. They acted. They adapted. And in doing so, they slowly transformed the Virelians' understanding of their own world. "Watch them," Relith said to the council one evening. "Notice how they move, how they respond, how they solve problems. This is not just strength. It is knowledge, experience, and will combined. If we can learn even a fraction of this, perhaps we can survive. Captain Jarek gathered his team at the edge of the largest acid lake on Virelia. This is where most civilizations would stop, he said. But not us. We map it. We find a path. And we keep moving. Virelia will survive, but only if we treat this as a problem to solve, not a curse to fear. The humans descended toward the lake. The air was toxic, burning lungs and stinging eyes. Mutated creatures scuttled and leaped from jagged rocks. But humans moved with careful precision. They measured, documented, and adapted as they went. They used portable shields to block corrosive rain, energy nets to catch aggressive animals without harming them, and sensors to monitor dangerous currents. Hours later, they returned to the city. Their gear battered, but functional. No one had been injured. They had mapped safe routes, discovered fresh water pockets, and even noted areas where mutated wildlife could be controlled. Virelians began to whisper among themselves. Perhaps they are not just helping us, one said. Perhaps they are teaching us how to survive. That evening, under the dim glow of the red skies, humans and Virelians gathered to review the day's work. Humans spoke simply, showing their results, explaining what they had learned, and giving instructions for the next day. Virelians listened, hesitant at first, but gradually they began to participate, asking questions, trying techniques, and following instructions. By the end of the week, small groups of Virelians were venturing into areas that had been previously impossible to reach. They followed human instructions, navigated dangerous zones, and returned with samples and observations. Their confidence grew, and with it, a new hope. High Counselor Relaith watched from his office as a team of humans and Virelians returned from the eastern storm zone, muddy, exhausted, but triumphant. He whispered to himself, "If any species can survive the impossible, it is them. And perhaps, just perhaps, if we learn from them, we can survive too." For the first time in generations, the Council felt a spark of hope. Virelia was still dying, still dangerous, still unpredictable. But for the first time, they believed that survival was possible. Not because of power or wealth, but because of courage, skill, and the human will to survive where others would fail. And so, the humans continued their work, teaching, guiding, and showing by example. Each day brought new dangers, new challenges, and new lessons. And each day, the Virelians watched, learned, and slowly began to understand what it meant to truly survive on a death world. Days passed, and the humans continued their work across Virelia. Where the Virelians had once seen only destruction and despair, the humans saw opportunity. Every acid rainstorm, every mutated predator, every quake or eruption became a challenge to overcome rather than a threat to flee. Slowly, the Virelians began to notice a change not just in their surroundings, but in themselves. Captain Jarek and his team gathered the Virelian Council members and a group of volunteers near the Eastern Ocean. "This is not a war we can fight with weapons," he explained plainly. "This is survival. You cannot wait for the storms to end, the oceans to purify, or the skies to clear. You adapt, you prepare, you act." The humans began with simple lessons. They showed the Virelians how to construct storm-resistant shelters using flexible metals and energy barriers. Unlike the Virelians' delicate architectural designs, the humans built fast, functional structures, designed to last through storms, earthquakes, and acid rains. They demonstrated how to anchor buildings into solid rock, how to seal windows and doors against corrosive water, and how to use energy fields to stabilize interiors. At first, the Virelians struggled. Their traditions prized beauty over function, and the practical, utilitarian structures of the humans seemed cold and harsh. Some counselors whispered concerns that humans were destroying Virelian culture. But Jarek ignored them. "Culture does not matter if the planet kills you," he said. "We teach survival first. Everything else comes later." Next came food and water. The humans brought portable filtration units and shared techniques to purify contaminated water from rivers and lakes. They introduced soil treatments that neutralized acidity and showed ways to grow crops even in degraded land. They emphasized efficiency over tradition, teaching Virelians to focus on nutrition and growth rather than aesthetics. Lyra, the young Virelian who had been curious about the humans before, watched closely. She saw the humans digging trenches, building barriers, and testing soil samples with devices that glowed faintly. "They make it look so simple," she whispered to a friend. "But they understand so much more than we ever could." The humans did not just give instructions, they led by example. When a sudden acid storm erupted over a research site, humans dashed into the open, deploying protective shields and moving fragile equipment to safety. Virelians froze, unsure if they should act. Captain Jarek noticed their hesitation and called out, "Do not wait. Move. Adapt. Survive." Under human guidance, the Virelians joined in. They carried instruments, set up temporary shelters, and learned to handle the storms without panic. By the end of the day, they had experienced firsthand the difference between fear and preparation. But survival was not the only lesson. The humans also taught innovation under pressure. They encouraged Virelians to experiment, to test new materials, to combine technology in ways their own culture had never considered. A storm-resistant roof became a water collector. A soil filter became a hybrid nutrient generator. A simple energy barrier became a protective enclosure for small communities. Some Virelians resisted at first. Old habits die slowly, and many were uncomfortable with trial and error. One counselor, Eldrin, complained, "This is dangerous. You encourage them to experiment on a planet that already kills." Jarek smiled, calm and unwavering. "Better to learn here, with guidance, than die because you refuse to try." Mistakes teach survival. Waiting teaches death. Slowly, attitudes began to shift. Virelians started building their own structures, purifying their own water, and planting crops with the methods humans had taught them. They began exploring areas of their planet they had avoided for decades. And with each success, their confidence grew. Meanwhile, news of the humans' work reached the wider galaxy. Observers from distant empires watched with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Some sent messages warning the Virelians to avoid interference by the humans. Others questioned why humans, a relatively unknown species, had taken the initiative, while larger, wealthier civilizations had ignored the planet's plight. The humans paid no attention. "We do not answer politics," Captain Jarek said during one briefing. "We answer problems. Virelia's survival is our mission. The galaxy can watch or learn, it makes no difference to us." The humans' boldness and effectiveness began to inspire the Virelians in ways no words could. Where fear had dominated before, courage now grew. Lyra herself took charge of a team of volunteers, replicating human techniques and venturing into regions that had been considered dead zones. Mutated predators and corrosive waters no longer paralyzed her. She observed, adapted, and acted, just as the humans had taught. At the same time, the humans encouraged cooperation and community problem-solving. They did not impose strict hierarchies. They led through example and guidance, allowing the Virelians to experiment and make decisions. Mistakes were treated as lessons, not failures. One group accidentally flooded a low-lying area with improperly diverted water, but the humans calmly guided them to fix it, turning the accident into a learning opportunity. By the end of the third cycle, Virelia's landscape had begun to change. Small storm shelters dotted the coasts. Water filtration stations appeared near rivers, and carefully cultivated plots of resilient crops grew where barren soil had ruled for decades. The Virelians were not just surviving, they were learning to control their environment, step by step. High Counselor Relith stood at a cliff overlooking the eastern plains. He watched as humans and Virelians worked side by side, moving with purpose through acid rain and high winds. I underestimated them, he admitted to Lyra, who had joined him. I thought survival required power and resources, but it seems it requires courage, wisdom, and the will to act. Lyra nodded. They make it look so simple, but everything they do is calculated. They survive where we thought survival was impossible. Perhaps we can learn to be like them. Even as progress was made, the humans warned that the challenges would grow. Captain Jarek addressed the council one evening. The planet will not stop testing you. Storms will intensify, oceans will poison more land, and the creatures will adapt to your defenses. You must do the same. Survival is a skill, not a gift. And with that, the humans continued their work, mapping the most dangerous zones, fortifying structures, purifying water, and training the Virelians. Every day brought new challenges, yet every day the Virelians grew stronger, smarter, and braver. For the first time in generations, the Virelians felt that survival was within reach, not because of magic, wealth, or luck, but because of discipline, courage, and learning from the species that thrived on the harshest worlds the galaxy had ever seen. By the end of the third part of this story, the Virelians had learned a simple truth. To survive a death world, one must act, adapt, and innovate, and there is no better teacher than a human. The storms were coming. The red clouds that had haunted Virelia for generations gathered over the eastern continent, swirling like a living monster. Lightning tore the sky apart, thunder shook mountains, and acid rain fell in sheets that would have destroyed unprepared settlements. This was the worst storm the planet had seen in centuries. Even the bravest Virelians hesitated at the edge of their cities, unsure if they could survive what was coming. Captain Jarek stood on the cliff overlooking the ocean, his eyes sharp and unyielding. Around him, humans moved with quiet urgency, checking equipment, reinforcing structures, and issuing instructions. Unlike the Virelians, they did not panic. Storms, poison, and chaos were familiar to them. They thrived in conditions where others would die. "This is it," Jarek said, turning to Relith. "This is the test, not just for your planet, but for your people. Do you lead, or do you wait to be destroyed?" Relith swallowed, nodding. "We will follow your guidance. Just tell us what to do." The humans divided into teams, each tasked with a specific mission. One team reinforced coastal cities with energy shields, protecting against tidal surges and corrosive rain. Another built temporary shelters on high ground for families that could not evacuate quickly. A third team navigated the forests and plains, marking safe routes and guiding Virelians to protective zones. For the Virelians, it was terrifying. Winds tore at their clothes, lightning struck dangerously close, and creatures, mutated by the harsh environment, prowled in the chaos. Many froze with fear, unable to move, while others wanted to run blindly into safer areas. But the humans were everywhere calm, organized, and fearless. "Do not stop," Jarek shouted over the wind. "Move, adapt, survive." Teams of humans reached the worst affected regions first. They worked together to stabilize buildings, carry families to safety, and neutralize threats from mutated wildlife. Virelians who followed struggled to keep up, but the humans guided them patiently. They handed tools, demonstrated techniques, and sometimes even carried the weaker Virelians themselves. Lyra led a small group of volunteers through a forest that had been considered impossible to cross. Trees snapped under the violent winds, and mutated predators attacked without warning. But she remembered the humans' lessons. Stay calm, assess danger, and use the environment to your advantage. Using ropes, shields, and energy nets, she guided her team safely through the chaos. In the coastal city of Lorinth, another crisis unfolded. Waves, supercharged by the storm, threatened to sweep entire neighborhoods into the poisoned ocean. Humans quickly deployed barriers and pumps to redirect water. Virelians helped under human instruction, learning how to combine technology and strategy. For the first time, they saw that survival was not about strength alone. It was about planning, adaptation, and action. Hours passed, and the storm did not relent. Lightning struck, winds shredded trees, and acid rain burned everything in its path. Yet, under human leadership, Virelia endured. Buildings that would have collapsed remained intact. Families remained safe, and teams of humans and Virelians navigated the chaos together. At one point, a massive lightning strike hit a ridge near a small village. Fires erupted, threatening to spread to nearby settlements. Humans reacted instantly. They deployed energy barriers to contain the flames and guided Virelians to safety. Some humans waded through acid rain, extinguishing smaller fires and rescuing trapped animals. Their calm precision inspired the Virelians, who had never seen courage expressed in such a methodical, fearless way. Relith, watching from a distance, whispered. By the fourth cycle of the storm, exhaustion began to show. Humans were wet, muddy, and scratched, yet they continued without complaint. They rested only briefly, using downtime to assess damage, repair equipment, and plan the next phase. Virelians, who had once despaired at storms, now worked side by side with humans, their fear replaced with purpose. As the storm reached its peak, Captain Jarek made a bold decision. "We cannot simply wait it out," he said. "We must take control of the environment wherever we can. Follow my lead." Using coordinated teams, humans moved into the most dangerous zones, redirecting acid streams, stabilizing unstable cliffs, and neutralizing aggressive wildlife with humane energy traps. Virelians followed, learning to act decisively and trust their instincts. For many, it was the first time they felt capable of confronting the planet's fury instead of fleeing from it. Lyra's team encountered a collapsed bridge that trapped several families. Humans immediately assessed the structure, creating a temporary support system, using portable materials and energy scaffolds. Virelians worked under human guidance, reinforcing the bridge just as lightning struck nearby. The bridge held. The families crossed safely. Cheers rang out through the storm, carried by the wind. By the end of the storm's fifth cycle, the worst had passed. The red clouds began to thin, the lightning subsided, and the acid rain slowed to a drizzle. Virelia was battered, but not broken. For the first time in centuries, the planet's people had faced the ultimate test and survived. High Counselor Relith walked among the exhausted Virelians, seeing them smile, hug, and laugh with relief. He saw the humans checking their equipment, repairing damaged shelters, and preparing for any lingering danger. Their calm endurance had taught a lesson that words alone never could. Captain Jarek approached him. "Your people learned something today," he said simply. "They learned that survival is possible. Not because the storms are weak, but because they are prepared. Fear is not a weakness. It is a signal, and action is the cure." Relith nodded, overwhelmed. "You have done more than we imagined. You have shown us what it means to survive a death world." The humans smiled faintly, refusing praise. For them, it was not heroism. It was training. It was preparation. It was life. And yet, the impact on the Virelians was clear. Their fear had been replaced by confidence, their despair replaced by determination. That night, under the red skies, humans and Virelians gathered in the city square. Fires burned, food was shared, and stories of survival were told. The Virelians looked at the humans with admiration and gratitude. They had faced the impossible and lived. Lyra approached Captain Jarek. "You didn't just help us survive," she said. "You taught us to face our world without fear." Jarek smiled. "You always had that strength," he replied. "You just needed to see it in action." As the storm passed completely and the first faint light of the sun broke through the clouds, the Virelians finally understood the humans' secret. Survival was not about waiting for help, hiding from danger, or hoping for miracles. It was about courage, adaptability, and the determination to act when others would flee. The humans had proven it beyond doubt. Virelia had endured the greatest storm in its memory, and it was still alive. And as the humans prepared for the next challenges, the Virelians knew one truth with certainty. If survival depended on courage, skill, and the will to act, then humanity, the Deathworlders, was the galaxy's unmatched force. The storms had passed. The skies of Virelia were still tinged with red, but the winds had calmed, the oceans had slowed their boiling rage, and the acid rain had faded to a drizzle. For the first time in generations, the Virelians walked freely through their cities and forests without fear of immediate disaster. Yet, the scars of their planet's fury were visible everywhere. Cities were damaged, forests were shredded, and the land itself seemed to ache. But the people had survived. Captain Jarek and his team of humans moved through the capital, inspecting the repairs, checking the water purification systems, and ensuring that the storm shelters remained secure. They were wet, tired, and scraped from the chaos of the previous days. Yet their faces carried no exhaustion, only determination. High Counselor Relithe walked beside them, watching as the humans coordinated repairs with precision. "You did more than save lives," he said quietly. "You changed our world and our people. We will never see Virelia the same way again." Jarek shrugged. "We didn't save your world. You did. We just showed you how. You acted, you adapted, and you survived. That's what matters." The Virelians began to rebuild their cities. But this time, the rebuilding was different. Gone were the fragile, ornamental designs that collapsed under stress. In their place, humans had taught sturdier, functional designs, resistant to storms, earthquakes, and the mutated wildlife that still roamed the forests. Buildings were anchored into solid rock, roofs flexed against wind, and energy shields reinforced the most vulnerable areas. It was not beautiful in the traditional sense, but it was alive, enduring, and practical. Lyra worked alongside humans and other Virelians to repair water filtration systems. She remembered the fear she had felt before the humans arrived, and compared it to the confidence she felt now. Every time a small success was completed, a filter fixed, a shelter reinforced, a family safely relocated, she felt a sense of pride she had never known. The humans had taught her that action was more powerful than hope, and courage more important than fear. Outside the cities, teams of humans guided Virelian volunteers in reclaiming the forests and plains. They planted new crops in areas where soil had been poisoned, redirected rivers and streams, and began carefully restoring habitats for wildlife that could survive in the new, harsh environment. The humans did not take control, they taught, guided, and allowed the Virelians to make decisions. And the Virelians, once timid and hesitant, now acted decisively, using lessons learned under the humans' leadership. Word of the humans' work spread quickly across the galaxy. Observers from distant civilizations, who had previously dismissed Virelia's plight, now watched in awe. Reports came of humans navigating storms, surviving conditions that would destroy any other species, and transforming a dying planet into a living one again. Some empires sent envoys, curious and cautious, while others simply observed, their pride mixed with disbelief. Relithe addressed a gathering in the central square of Lorinth, surrounded by humans, Virelians, and a few interstellar envoys. "We begged the galaxy for help," he said. "We were ignored. Every empire we asked turned away. But Earth's humans, their Deathworlders, answered without hesitation. They did not promise. They did not negotiate. They acted. And because of them, our world still breathes. Our people still live. Captain Jarek stepped forward, but he spoke not as a conqueror or savior, but as a teacher. The galaxy may not understand us, he said, but we do not act for fame or power. We act because survival is worth it. Virelia is alive today because its people chose to learn, adapt, and act. You were always capable. We only showed you the way. The Virelians listened in silence, realizing that the humans' greatest gift was not technology or strength, it was example. Humans thrived on worlds that should have destroyed them. They faced storms, poisoned air, violent predators, and harsh terrain. Yet they endured. They showed that survival was not granted. It was earned through courage, ingenuity, and unwavering will. As the sun broke through the red clouds, faint and dim, the humans prepared to leave. Their work on Virelia was not yet finished. Storms would return. The oceans would remain volatile. And the mutated creatures still posed threats, but the foundations had been set. Virelians now had the knowledge, tools, and confidence to continue without constant human guidance. Lyra approached Jarek, holding a small, repaired water filter she had completed with human guidance. "Will you come back?" she asked quietly. Jarek smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We will always answer when worlds are in danger. But now, Virelia's people are strong. You know how to survive. You can face what comes next." The humans boarded their ships, engines humming, shields retracting, and devices glowing softly. As the fleet lifted into the sky, Virelians watched in awe. They had called for help and been ignored, yet the smallest, most unpredictable species in the galaxy had answered. Humans did not just save lives, they awakened a civilization. Even distant empires took notice. Reports of humans' actions reached councils across the galaxy. Some tried to dismiss them as lucky or reckless, but the facts were undeniable. Humans survived where others failed. Humans acted when others hesitated. Humans thrived where the impossible dominated. Slowly, the galaxy began to understand. Humans were not merely another species. They were exceptional. In the weeks following the storm, Virelians continued their rebuilding efforts. Structures stood stronger, crops flourished in reclaimed soil, and the people moved with newfound confidence. Schools began teaching techniques humans had demonstrated, from storm navigation to water purification. The lessons went beyond technology. They were lessons in courage, adaptability, and determination. Relith watched a group of children racing through a repaired plaza, laughing as the wind whipped around them. "They will grow, knowing that survival is not impossible," he said to Lyra. "All because humans showed us how to face the impossible and endure." Lyra nodded, looking toward the horizon where the human fleet had disappeared into the stars. "The galaxy ignored us," she said softly. "But one species believed we could survive, and because of them, we will." Jarek's words echoed in her mind. "You were always capable. We only showed you the way." And so, Virelia entered a new era. It was still a dangerous world, still harsh and unpredictable, but it was alive. Its people had learned to endure, adapt, and thrive. And the galaxy, once dismissive and indifferent, now watched with respect and curiosity, realizing that Earth's Deathworlders had set a new standard. The humans left quietly, not seeking glory or reward. They traveled to the next challenge, the next dying world, ready to answer the calls that others feared. But their impact on Virelia would remain forever, a lasting proof that courage, ingenuity, and the will to survive make humans a force unlike any other in the galaxy. And the Virelians, once a species on the brink of extinction, now knew the truth. When the impossible comes, it is humanity, the Deathworlders, who rise to meet it. The red skies began to fade as the sun rose higher, painting the land with a golden light that had not been seen in decades. Virelia's people looked toward the future, stronger, braver, and wiser. And somewhere among the stars, the humans moved onward, leaving a galaxy that would never underestimate them again.